Our society is obsessed with being thin. From fad diets to a multitude of exercise routines to diet pills, we're ready to do just about anything to be thinner, especially women. Women in particular have a tendency to think that if only I was thinner, I would be happier. Well, I'm here today to burst that bubble for you, but hopefully in a really good way. You see, I am one of those women that has a supposedly perfect body. I've never had to lift a finger to achieve it, and even after pregnancy, I didn't gain a gram. All this is due to my freakishly fast metabolism, which I was born with. I constantly hear, "Wow, you're so lucky." But I'm not telling you all this to show off, because in reality, I've never felt lucky. And while I may have a so-called perfect body, my mind actually looks like this. Yes, my friends, my mind is obese. But what does that mean? Well, from very early on, we're taught about our physical bodies, metabolism, fat storage, calories. We know for a fact that our body's ability to burn off calories, for example, has a lot to do with our genes. We know that if one person eats a donut, it goes straight to their thighs, while that same donut will just spontaneously combust in another person's body, like mine. We acknowledge that our physical weight depends 50 to 70% on our genetic predisposition. But what about our state of mind? I'm sure all of us by now have heard some kind of cliche, inspirational quote like, "Think positive, happiness is a choice, be grateful for what you have and you'll be happy, positive attitude is key, and of course, just smile." The underlying flaw in every one of these happiness slogans is that they all have the same presumption, that you have 100% control of your state of mind. But believe me when I say that advising a sad person to smile in order to feel happy is like telling an overweight person to do a jumping jack in order to become thin. It just doesn't work. But then there's more serious advice. There's a multitude of books, audios, videos, workshops, seminars, retreats. Happiness is an over $10 billion a year industry because just like people strive to be thin, even more so they strive to be happy. And this happiness industry has made a lot of money off me. I've read every self-help book imaginable. Everything from scientifically reprogramming your subconscious mind to the new age inspiration of the law of attraction. I've watched and listened to most of the self-help gurus out there. I tried all sorts of mental exercise, from meditating in nature by myself to meditating with different kinds of audio backgrounds with heavy rain, Buddhist temple bells, tapping sounds, clicking sounds, nature sounds. I've listened to various audios of self-help programs. I've attempted guided hypnosis and unguided hypnosis, raising my vibration, emotional freedom techniques where you actually tap yourself in different places to relieve supposed emotional blocks. I've done yoga, talked to life coaches, and created vision boards with pictures and positive affirmations about what I want to achieve. I've studied neuro-linguistic programming, and I even got an NLP and life coaching certificate myself. And of course, I've been to psychologists and psychiatrists, and I've even tried various kinds of antidepressants. I spent 12 years and thousands of dollars and euros, all just to feel happy. And after repeatedly coming back to this, after every happiness program that promised profound results, I felt even worse about myself. What was wrong with me? Frustrated with the lack of results from paying to achieve happiness, I started doing some free research, and I found some pretty interesting information. In a recent study on happiness, researchers found that about 50% of your state of mind depends on genetic predisposition, about 10% on your circumstances, and only about 40% is more or less up to you. That, right there, explained a lot in my own case. That means that half of the reason you feel the way you do on a daily basis is not under your control. So, just like your physical complexion largely depends on genes, so does your mental state. This was an incredible revelation to me because I finally had an answer as to why I've struggled so much to achieve happiness. But unfortunately, as a society, much like we're obsessed with being thin, we have also become obsessed with being happy. And isn't it ironic considering that more people report being depressed now than ever in the history of the human race? Has the pressure to be positive all the time become so heavy that many of us are simply cracking under its weight? In developed societies, the pressure to be happy now can easily be equated to the pressure to be thin. And while a lot of us acknowledge the existence of thin privilege, we seem to be completely oblivious to the concept of happy privilege. Many of us will condemn fat shaming, but what about sad shaming? Because just like a lot of physically overweight people can't accept their bodies, we now have a lot of mentally overweight people who can't accept their minds. That's why happiness is such a lucrative industry. And while most self-help methods will start out by telling you to accept yourself the way you are, very quickly you realize that who you are is simply not good enough when you fail to achieve the results they promise. That's why true self-acceptance is the key element here. Does self-acceptance mean that you should never put in any effort or do any mental exercises again? No. Just like accepting being physically overweight doesn't mean that you should completely disregard your diet and physical activity. Actually, no one should do either of those things. But what it does mean is that you stop beating yourself up for just being who you are. It means that right here and now you break the vicious cycle of not being happy, failing to fix it, feeling guilty about it, and then becoming more unhappy as a result. Acceptance is understanding that you don't actually need to be happy, just like you don't need to be thin to have a valid existence in this world. And when you truly accept this, a very interesting thing happens. Even if you don't stop feeling sad, at the very least, you stop feeling guilty about feeling sad. And that alone is enough to break that vicious cycle, which is very liberating indeed. Finally, I want to stress that none of what I said in this video is to glorify negativity or dismiss self-help altogether. Just because a lot of things haven't worked for me doesn't mean that will be the case for everybody else. But could we lower the bar of acceptance just a little bit? Because people really need to start understanding that just like not everyone can achieve a fit body, well, not everyone can achieve a fit mind. And that is okay. Also, please keep in mind that calling someone negative is really no better than calling someone fat. It hurts, period. And proceeding to say that all this negative person needs to do is choose happiness to feel better is like telling an obese person to choose thinness to suddenly drop all the weight. It's almost insulting, isn't it? So unless we are hurting someone, we negative people have as much right to freedom of expression as positive people. And also, being negative does not make us bad people. In fact, some of the most interesting, kind, loyal, and intelligent people I've ever met could be described as negative. And some of the most positive, happy-go-lucky people have hurt me and turned out to be ignorant, selfish, and arrogant. In conclusion, it's important to note that none of this means that you should be okay with clinical depression. Much like a physical disease, clinical depression is a mental illness and requires professional treatment. But a so-called negative attitude is not an illness. For a lot of us, it's a product of our genetic makeup, and it's high time we just accepted it. So, if you can't look like this by simply choosing to, then you can't just choose to be happy either.